Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend-Guard, your host, and I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School and a faculty fellow at the A.B. Friedman School of Business at Tulane. And I just want to quilt. So today we talk to JoAnne and Anne Vandermay, mother and daughter and quilters.
So my name is Anne.
And I'm JoAnne Vandermey, and we are calling from Beansville, Ontario, Canada.
Very cool.
Which is a small town.
It's a small town?
It's a small town in the Niagara Peninsula area. So
interesting.
Across the lake from Toronto and 30 minutes from Niagara Falls.
Oh, wow. That's really amazing. So do you feel like living in a small town is cool because you also have all the big stuff close by? Is that kind of your feeling, or?
Yeah, I grew up in a rural community close to a bigger town, and I haven't moved far from that. So I like living with the farmland around as well.
That's so
and
cool.
Still being able to go to a big city like Hamilton or Toronto and do different things.
Very cool. I did my the archive I used for my dissertation was in Hamilton, so I traveled to Hamilton many times. I love Hamilton. I was coming from LA and I just thought it was like green and lovely and nice, and it was the 90s where LA had rioting and it was awful, and and this was like, I love Canada. I love Hamilton, so I'll have to come visit you all.
Yeah. Oh, sure. You can have a place to stay.
Sounds perfect. So tell me, I already know about Anne, so tell me a little bit about your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life.
I do not ever remember a time where I didn't have sewing or knitting or embroidery or some sort of craft with your hands.
Yeah.
My mom was a farm wife on a fruit farm and raised us kids while working full-time in the season out on farm. And in amongst all of that, she still did her sewing and canning and baking and cooking and managing the business side of the business. So it was a pretty high standard to follow. But she used to sit and sew with her Singer sewing machine in what we called our little family room in the big farmhouse. We had two houses on the property. My grandmother lived next door, and she would let us play with fabric, with buttons, with yarn, doing crafts. So she taught me to sew, and I found out recently that she did quilt. I didn't know that when I was a kid, that she did quilt when I was younger, and that my favorite quilt that I lost track of, which was a Scotty dog quilt, and she had made that, and it was on my bed for years.
Really?
And, it's gone missing, but she thinks she might still have the pattern, so I can reproduce it.
Oh, how cool!
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So she kind of squirrels everything away. And then when I was in my early 20s and my friends were getting married, I decided to, as a good friend, that making them a queen-size quilt for their weddings as a present was a thing you did. So my mom thought I should learn more about quilting. So this was in around 82 to 87, 88. Uh-huh. And she took me over to the neighbor who was a Mennonite woman, not old order or anything like that, but her family had come from Russia, and she was the quilter in the neighborhood. She made beautiful quilts, whole cloth quilts, pieced quilts. She had a large family. She had 7 kids, and she taught me to quilt with cereal box templates and a pair of scissors.
Amazing.
And although I sewed the top together, I made these 4 or 5 queen size quilts during that time, with my mom helping me to hand quilt them.
Amazing.
Because
oh my gosh.
A big frame in our dining room, and
Wow.
And we would hand quilt them.
Amazing.
And probably my mom did more of that than I did, because I was in nursing school and then getting a job and working. So that's what I did. And then I didn't do much quilting until my kids were grown, but I always made clothes for them and doll clothes for them and toys and costumes for the high school play, and just always doing something along that line.
How long did it take you to make each of those quilts, do you think, for your friends?
Oh, it was time consuming, because you were doing it all in between doing other things.
Right.
But they all got made and they all got finished. And but I never made one for myself.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's.
But my mom had made me a wedding quilt, and that's now in pieces, because in the 80s we had that VIP cotton, and it sort of disintegrates, especially if you use it and love it well.
Really interesting. You see that the quality of the fabric has gotten better over time.
It has, and but that was what we had.
Yeah.
Was VIP cotton. I don't remember really seeing anything else. Although my mom was very inventive or frugal. She doesn't like waste things. And she made a quilt for me out of crimpolene, which in the 70s was this endurable polyester fabric that did not die no matter how much you tried.
That's really interesting.
And my mom made our clothes out of it. So even if you hated it, she would go to our local sewing store, and which is our version of JoAnnes is Fabricland in this area. And she would go to Fabricland and get a 2-for-1 deal. And the outfits I remember most was the lime green outfits that she made us. And she made us jackets, skirts, and pants. And rest colored check. And I so wanted that outfit to die.
Oh, I totally get it. I get it. My mom sewed too, and I feel like she made me these weird matching 2 sets of it, polka dot shirt and pants, but I was like in high school, and it was like, oh my gosh, it was dreadful. And I think I remember falling madly in love with actually the boy that I ended up marrying in this most ridiculous outfit. But there was nothing to do about it. You still had to wear it because Mom, she worked really hard on it, and so it was ridiculous.
Well, you're lucky. I didn't date much until I went to college. So.
Oh, I didn't. I just fell. We didn't date until we were much later, but I did fall madly in love with him at that time. So that's a whole nother story we don't need to get into. But I do remember standing there in this ridiculous outfit, and he said something like "cute pants" or something. I was like, "Oh no, you're just making fun of me."
Well, some of the pictures you'd like to hide of your high school and grade school picture day pictures, because some of them weren't as attractive as they could be.
No,
but
it was.
I share all those warts with my children. It makes them laugh.
It's true.
But this polyester quilt, you could not kill. So we used it as a picnic blanket.
Yeah.
When my kids were small, and we called it the Ugly Wuggly quilt.
That's funny.
Because it was so ugly, it was kind of funny, and someone stole it.
Someone stole it?
Yeah.
I was going to ask for a picture of it. That's so funny. Somebody
stole it. So we were on a picnic for Canada Day, and somebody walked off with it.
Somebody loved it.
Yeah.
So tell me, when did you start quilting again? So tell me what got you quilting again?
I had a small group with friends. We would meet for dinner once a month, and my girlfriend called it the Find It, Finish It Club. So we called it Fifi, and we would bring and have dinner, and they didn't have children, but I did. So we would have dinner and work on projects. So I kind of unearthed a bunch of projects. And in 1999, I started the 1999 quilt, which I got a lot of the blocks done. And that was because I had gotten a fancy sewing machine, and I was the store was gave classes, and we could do this quilt. It was a Husqvarna, and you would go to Husqvarna Club, and so I was making this quilt to go into our house.
What is Husqvarna? I don't know that.
Husqvarna is a brand of sewing machine.
Got it.
And originally they were out of Sweden. So Husqvarna is kind of together with Husqvarna White, and they still have Husqvarna machines.
Tools as well, don't they?
What?
Well,
Husqvarna does construction tools.
Well, Husqvarna also does chainsaws and heavy light equipment.
Interesting.
So when I would say, I have a Husqvarna, people would look at me like, you have a chainsaw? No, it's a sewing machine.
That's great.
But our local store at one point was selling chainsaws on one side and garden equipment tools and sewing machines on the other side.
Love it.
But that was a while ago. So I made this quilt, and then we moved, and it was no longer my colors, and it got shoved aside. My kids were busy with grade school and high school, and I eventually donated that to our local quilt group. So I started, my mom's friends passed away, and she didn't have anybody to go to Quilt Guild with. So I started going back to I went to a Quilt Guild actually for the first time, and I would go with my mom so that we would have something to do and share some time together. And she missed her friends, so we went together to the guild. So I guess getting back into a quilt guild and seeing quilts and where they had come from the early 80s to 2000, the scenes had really changed. You had rotary cutters and rulers and mats, and it sure is a lot more accurate to use a rotary cutter and ruler than it is
templates.
Cardboard.
Yeah, template. Amazing. Yeah. It's so interesting to think about, like, in our lifetime, how dramatically quilting has changed. That you think about, like, I know Mary Fons is doing a ton of work on the historical progression of quilting, but it's really hard to believe that we live in a time that was, I don't know, it just seems weird. I mean, it seems like rotary cutters and rulers should have been like a 1920s thing. Like, like the idea that we didn't have them, it's just bizarre to me. I don't know. It just seems crazy to me that it's this late in the development of industrialization that we get a means to quilt. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty late, I think. I don't know. Do you?
I'm wondering who the person was who looked at a box cutter and said, "Hey, you could use this with fabric."
I know, it's true.
That would be interesting, actually, to know who invented. And,
I know, it's true. Who invented the rotary cutter? That's very true. I'm gonna look it up. So now tell me about your life. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm looking it up. The first rotary cutter was introduced by Olfa Company in 1979 for garment making, but it was quickly adopted by quilters. That's very
interesting because they make a lot of industrial tools, hand tools, and cutting things. Because my son, who's a woodworker, goes, "Oh, you have an Olfa?" So
that's really interesting.
So there's
really
that, you know, there's
interesting.
that sewing machine versus outdoor chainsaw tools thing, and rotary
Right.
cutter versus somebody
Right.
got a brain idea.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, you think about like the sewing machine is around forever, but that this comes into play so late. We'll have to try to find a way to interview them because I think it'd be really interesting.
yeah.
Like what part of technology was it just like someone being super clever, or was it that we didn't have enough technology to be able to do that? But that seems crazy to me too. I mean, really, like the rotary cutter is after we send men to the moon? Like that's craziness to me.
Yeah, and it's really interesting when you go to Houston.
Yeah.
If you can take a side trip down to the
Oh, it's the museum?
the Space Center.
Oh, the
we
Space
did that
Center.
when we went down to Houston.
Yeah.
And their technology to send a man to the moon was probably smaller. Like our cell phones have more
Amazing.
memory capability
That's really
than they
craziness.
used to send a man to the moon.
So next year, I guess, is the 40th anniversary of the rotary cutter because it started in 1979. That's craziness.
They could have rotary cutting parties.
Totally. We should totally, right?
Not with wine, though.
Not with wine. Oh my
No,
goodness.
forget
I would
that.
love to see like experience what the first one is, how much it's changed, you know? All right, so we've gotten off track. So which is not surprising. But that's okay. I don't
We call that
believe
doing a squirrel.
during a swirl. Is that what you said?
A squirrel.
A squirrel
So,
doing a
in the movie-
squirrel.
In the movie Up, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
up, right.
Up.
Squirrel. That's right. I know, totally.
The dog.
Totally.
Yeah,
I
so
squirrel
that's our
all the
family.
time. It's totally true. Doing a squirrel. I like that. Yep, totally. But I think maybe life is not supposed to be linear. I think I think it is more squirrely. It's supposed to be more squirrely because that's where you find interesting things, you know.
It's more fun.
It's more fun. It's true. Yeah.
So we were talking about my Fifi club.
Your Fifi Club. Tell me about your... Yes, let's keep going with the
Find
Fifi
it,
Club.
finish it.
Yeah.
Some life things happened. Oh, and one of the girls that I was in that with, we went to what was then called the Creative Sewing and Needlework Festival in Toronto. It's changed names. It's now called the Creative Festival.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we would take classes, and that's where we would pull Anne out of school and come with us. And
Oh,
take her
that's
friends.
great. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun in high school, grade school and high school. You get to go off to Toronto and buy fabric and
That's really cool.
take classes and stuff. So
Yeah, and funnily enough, the girls always won prizes.
yeah.
So they would have prizes during the day,
Yeah.
and Anne was very lucky. She always won something, and
My friends would win things.
Aw,
so that was
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really cool. I like that. And that's where you learned to
And
quilt.
then that's when we got back into quilting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So doing that, and my sister, I think Anne on her podcast had talked about going to Vermont, and
Yeah.
they have oodles of quilt stores there.
Yeah,
I think they
right.
have 13 or 14 in the state, and their population is, I think, I don't even think it's 1 million in the whole state. So
No.
It's crazy.
they have a lot of quilters. So we went to the Vermont Quilt Festival, and that's where they all
Yeah,
loved
Vermont
Anne.
Quilt Festival is amazing. Quilt Festival I really want to get there. That one we haven't. I mean, I just think that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think after you go to Houston,
Yeah.
most are kind of pale in summary.
No,
but,
it's true. It's true. And a few people a group went to Paducah last year, so that's great. But Vermont's on the list. You know, that's a big one. You were at the Vermont Quilt Show, and
Yeah, so we fell in love with quilting again, or maybe more so in buying fabric.
I like that too.
So yeah,
And then you have to use it.
then you have to use it because you get feeling a little bit guilty. And through some other events, I got making a quilt with my friend who we did this club with, and she was in remission for a short time. She had cancer, and we went and bought fabric for a quilt for her husband. And that really kind of got me back into making bigger items. And because it was another queen size quilt.
Wow.
It wasn't a queen size quilt. It just kind of grew into that. I have that problem. Something starts out small and they just grow bigger.
So why do they grow bigger? What happens? Do you just like them a lot, or do you make what makes them grow?
It's probably something in me that has to take a pattern and do something different with it. So I have a quilt on my bed right now that started out as a guild class where you made strips and you cut them up and then you put them back together. And it was supposed to be like a twin size quilt, and now it's an oversized queen on my bed. Because when I made the blocks, I wasn't happy with the busyness of the design. So then I added gray around the blocks. It was a red and white and black quilt. I sort of added a charcoal gray around that, and then it was still too busy. So I added blocks. They're probably about 18 by 18.
Wow.
I added just red and white blocks, and then I did it on point, which takes up a little bit more.
You're totally insane. So it's just getting bigger.
It's a queen size quilt.
It's just getting bigger. That is very funny.
It's the first quilt my husband really liked.
Oh, well, that's cool.
So even though it doesn't go with our brown walls, it's on our bed.
That's really lovely. I
like
really
that.
Liked it. Yeah, I like it when the husband or the partner or the friends like the quilts. I like, every once in a while mine will be like, I like that one. It's good. I like that.
And then you want to do positive reinforcement that they like it, so they let you go buy more fabric.
Totally.
And,
it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's interesting, isn't it? That we should do some stuff on like the relationships of quilting. Like it's obviously, kids to parents, but also partners. Really interesting. So this is kind of totally off topic. We should, but he he ordered a new bike and he went to test it, and he was like, just like so excited, and he was like, "Does this what you feel like when you're testing a new sewing machine?" I was like, "Yes, baby."
Pretty much.
I'm like, "Let's go buy that bike."
Well, then there's the thing of reciprocal spending. If he gets the bike, you get more fabric.
No, it's totally true. And he's been so good. I mean, he never says like, why is there more fabric in the house and sometimes he's even like, hey, there's a new coupon at JoAnnes. Do you want to go tonight? Like as we are going out, it's like, you're so lovely. But yeah, I think we had this big long talk about his bike because he had to choose between two, and he's like, it was clear that he loved one. And I was like, well, the sewing machine I loved from the beginning. Like you should just pick something you totally, totally love. Like don't settle. There's no reason to settle. I mean, the price wasn't any different. But it was interesting because it was very like hobbies can bring you together even if it's not the same hobby, so.
Definitely. I tease my husband a lot, or we tease Anne's dad a lot because he's an accountant. And by trade, and so he'd be a CPA, and I have to account for every dollar. And I think I say that because I want to put checks and balances on myself. Because he never said no.
Yeah.
And this is how sweet he was. I bought a sit-down long arm quilting machine because I could no longer hand quilt everything.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I just had tops building up, and I saw hundreds of dollars going out the door. And when I would send out to a long armor, it wasn't my work.
Yeah.
So I bought a sit down long arm, and then I had back issues, and it killed me to work on it. I could not get comfortable. So I had a few spinal issues. And so I was crying one day. I spent all this money, and he said, well, like if the other kind would be better, you could, and I said, could I get one that I made a mistake. And he goes, well, you can get a stand-up long arm. So now I have a stand-up long arm.
Oh, that's so nice.
In the basement. Yeah.
That's really nice.
I mean, not everybody can do that, but
no, but financially that's amazing, but also the story really is about love. Like, that means a lot, It's like, it's love.
He's a sweetie.
He is a sweetheart.
So he took us, we went to Houston last fall.
You did?
Which is what got the business started.
Oh, right, we have the business. We got to talk about the business.
He tagged along, and he didn't go to market with us, but he'd come at the end of every day and grab all the stuff that we got and bring it back to the Airbnb. And so it was really sweet.
Yeah, he's very good. It was because Anne and I had a quilt in the Canada 150 exhibit our friends put together. We really wanted to go to see that and to experience market too, to see if it was something that I wanted to do. I always seem to want to have a business going of some type, and to really find out what it was like and what it would take and how that could look like, because it's a very different world coming into, computers had just started when we got married, and the internet had just, sort of started coming in. And
right.
So our kids grew up with all of that, but we kind of grew into it.
Yeah, I agree.
And one year I had to have some surgery, so it was Christmas time, and I bought everything online that I needed for my Christmas, and that was the first time I'd really online shopped. And I don't do a lot of fabric shopping online because I kind of need to feel it. I'm a tactile person, but I do buy notions online, and I buy, I buy my thread online because I know what thread I like to use. And
what thread do you like to use?
I like to use, I do use Wonderfill, and I'm just starting with them because I have a wholesale account with them for the long arm. And so it's getting used to it with that on my machine. And I do like to use that. But before I would always use just straight Gutermann cotton thread to do my piecing with.
Yeah.
I would stock up.
I do still sometimes because I was Wonderful Canadian?
Wonderfill head office is in Calgary, but they also are always at market.
Interesting.
And they do sell into the world market. They're not as well known as, say, Superior is.
Yeah, right.
But I find you also get to know people who, over the years, Wonderfill had always been at the Creative Festival, and it was a family-run business. And their daughters are at the festival doing it. They come to Toronto every year, and they're just a really nice family. So you get a really personal touch with.
It's really interesting.
Thread isn't working. Why isn't it working?
Right.
And they answer that.
Very cool. Interesting. And they sell in the U.S. I can see that from. That's really great. Yeah. So tell me about your business.
Well, my business is Jo Fiber Arts. I go by the name of Jo. My friends encouraged me to start doing some art quilting. And I had a local exhibition with that and sold some pieces. And so I've been doing some art quilts, and I belong to Studio Art Quilters Associates or Association.
What's your web? Do you have a website?
It's Jo, JOS Fiber, FIBER.
Arts.com.
Arts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm there.
It's not been up to date very much.
Yeah,
since the summer. It's being built by a friend of my daughter's, and cool. I need to get her good quality pictures which we never do one thing at a time in this house. So this summer I started my love of dyeing fabric and eco dyeing fabric and indigo dyeing. So I spent all summer dyeing fabric and hand dyeing. And then we went and vended at a quilt show in the end of September.
And how was that?
And, as my husband said, it wasn't a boom, but it wasn't a bust.
That's cool.
So that technically means in his terms, we didn't make money, but we didn't lose money.
That's pretty cool.
But it is exhausting.
It's exhausting.
It is
exhausting, right?
Yeah.
What's that about?
So prepping for the show, and because I was hand dyeing, that's more than just buying in fabric. You know, you're buying in a blank white piece prepared for dyeing fabric, and you are mixing the dyes and coloring it. And
amazing.
Occasionally re-dyeing when you get the mixture wrong.
Yeah. How much are you dyeing at a time?
Well, I've started out doing fat quarters to learn the process of dyeing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did 3 different rainbows. So that would be done in solo beer cups, because that's the amount of fabric that will fit into that. And then I was dyeing half yards, and it was my idea to go into dyeing bigger yardage, because it's less of a process. I didn't sell a lot of the hand dyes at the show. They're not solid colors because there's color variation, because it's low immersion dyeing. So it's not like you're coloring it one solid fabric, because you're not agitating it all the time. So you get some different sort of texture color.
Like a marbling.
Almost like marbling,
really?
But not that process.
Very interesting. I would love to see them. I would love to see sort of what they look like. Is there a place to see them online?
Well, I have to take the pictures.
You have to take the pictures. Okay. Send them to me. I'd be really interested.
Yeah. But at the same time, my son started renovating our sewing studio down in the basement. We're taking over the whole basement. And everything has not been in its place. Like he's just at the point where he's putting the baseboards on. So this has been a 2-month project already.
That's interesting.
And I have sewing machines all over the house. I have fabric all over the house. I clean up a little bit when someone comes over, and then it all just goes back out again. I can't even find half of the things I own. The one thing that did sell well at the show was I did shibori fabric with indigo dye.
Yeah.
And Anne had made up a quilt for herself, which is beautiful. And she got so many compliments on it that I sold almost out of my hand indigo. But that is, again, is a hand process.
Interesting.
It's creating resists on the fabric, dyeing it in the indigo dye, waiting for it to oxygenate to get the color blue. It goes from green to blue. Re-dyeing it if it's not a dark enough color as you want, letting it dry, washing it out, making sure that you have all the excess dye molecules out so it doesn't run on someone else's fabric, and then ironing it and packaging it. So,
all right, this seems really intensive, like labor intensive. Does it seem like that to you? Yeah. So why do it? So not in a bad way, but in like a good way. Like what motivates you to do the hand dyeing? And is it economics? Is it like, what is it that's sort of motivating you to do it?
It's not economics, because I would much,
it'd be a lot cheaper and faster just to buy fabric.
Just to buy fabric.
If it was just the process of, I want to make a certain quilt and I want it to look like that fabric, that quilt on that wall, I'm better to go and buy a bundle of fat quarters and make that quilt that is that pattern on that wall.
Right.
But I guess it's the process of actually learning. And I think that's what I'm finding is it's the process of learning how to do something that excites me more.
Yeah.
And how does that work? And how can I change it to be mine? And the art quilts, nobody will have the same quilt as me, because even if they looked at it and tried to do it, there's no pattern for it. So
are you dyeing fabric so that they are like good resources for other art quilts? Is that part of like your motivation for what, like it isn't just fabric, it's sort of materials for that would be conducive to art quilts? Is that your kind of focus?
And that is why I started getting into it.
Interesting.
And not that there isn't commercial fabric out there that can do that, but we do live in Canada. We don't have the resources of quilt stores or online stores here in Canada to buy from. It's expensive. That's why we stock up when we go to Vermont. Sorry, my local quilt stores that I love. But when you're looking at paying $16 to $20 a meter for a boutique here.
Wow.
And you can buy it, especially if there's a sale, we can have more variety when we go to Vermont and, pick up some material than we can get here.
It's so interesting.
And when you order it in line from the U.S., you are getting the U.S. price. And your postage is cheaper. Our postage here is really expensive to get a package here.
Now, do you think you'll go online with your business? Do you think you'll sell online, and will you sell to the U.S.?
I would not sell to the U.S. I don't want to get involved with cross-border issues. Mm-hmm. And that would simply be because you have to get into... My husband worked for a floral company and for a wine company most of his career. Mm-hmm. And issues cross-border are so huge.
Interesting.
So the paperwork that has to be filled out for things to cross the border.
Yeah.
And then you get hit not just with taxes, but you get hit with duty.
Right.
Tariffs. They're basically tariffs.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's craziness.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I buy in fabric to dye mm-hmm. from the U.S., it comes from China, mostly, silks especially, but just the gray goods come in from China. Mm-hmm. So if the tariffs has gone on that now, that tariff, we don't have that if I get it from China directly, but volume wise, I can't deal in those economy of scale.
Yeah.
And so I would be paying that tariff now on top of whatever's coming in, and then Canadian duty and tariffs. So our sales tax here is 13%. That's our government and provincial sales tax. In Ontario is 13%. So as soon as something's coming across the border to me, it's the difference in the American dollar, which ranges in between 30 cents and 40 cents over the last 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And then another 13% onto that.
That's a lot.
And then whatever tariff they decide to do.
That's craziness. Now, would you ever set up your business in Vermont or someplace else so that you wouldn't have those problems to sell in the U.S.?
No. I think just economies of scale. What I'm sort of looking at now as a model for me is I just a fiber art store has opened up in Beansville. Mm-hmm. And I've just started to teach some classes there.
Yeah.
And I think being paid for my hourly rate
to teach it.
I'm making way more than I will ever make
with fabric. Now, do you require them to have kits if you're teaching there? Is that a way to make more?
Yeah, well, that then if you're doing at a guild,
yeah,
then I bring in the supplies and I make a kit for the person. For instance, it seems to everybody wants to learn to eco dye with leaves, so then I'm bringing in the silk scarves and any of the. So I do a kit fee.
A kit fee, yeah, right.
Yeah. So
And
they
that's
pay
one
for
way
the class
to do that.
and a kit fee, and that's the model that most quilt stores go on.
Yeah.
But if I'm teaching in the local store, she's bringing that kit fee in. She's bringing that kit in because the purpose of having the classes make some money
for the store, so that she pays you, and then she gets the kit fee. So that way it works.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, because on the kit, she's not making a whole lot on the kit.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So, yeah, especially when you get into art quilting, because you're not making big things.
You're not making,
like
you don't need,
coming in and,
right, lots of, you need little bits of fabric, not huge bits of fabric. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I'm looking at doing that, and I'm also looking at selling my my products in a co-op.
Oh, cool. What kind of co-op are you thinking about? We're trying to think about it. Tell me about the co-op.
Well, I just got an application, and I went into the store to look to see if they have what I do there. And you have to go through a jury process. Pardon?
What is the co-op called?
It's called Textures.
Textures Co-op.
And it's in Hamilton. Yeah. So they take a percentage, and you work 1 day a week, 1 day a month, or 2 days a month in the store.
Yeah.
Textures. And they take a percentage.
Yeah. Hamilton, Ontario.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
They've been 35th anniversary. That's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my good friends, Lisa, is a potter, and she sells her work through there, and she's been trying to get me to do this for a few years now. But I'm finally at the right time of my life.
That's very cool.
We're all grown up.
We're all, we're all grown up.
They're all grown
Not
up.
your parents. But
I've got one that's semi-grown
They're all
up.
grown up.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, you miss some of it when it's gone.
I know. I keep saying that to her. Like, she's like, I've got 3 more years till she goes to college, and I'm like, she's like, do you mind me taking me to this place? I'm like, I'll take you anywhere, baby. Like, we only have 3 more years. like you will do anything you want. Because I'm like getting all sad on her. It's ridiculous. But maybe
they go off all over the country, right?
Right, exactly. So, I know. I keep telling her I'm just going to do a visiting professorship wherever she goes. I'm just going to follow her. She's like, okay, Mom.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well.
My sister's a professor in Vermont, and she works at Middlebury College. And, and
that's a good college. Yeah.
Is doing that. Yeah, so her son is doing those tours. The circuit.
Yes, we're going to be doing that a little bit this summer. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's good. I mean, growing up is good, but it's good. And then hopefully they come back around, so that's good. Okay, I can't find anything about the Textures Craftwork. So what percentage do they take, you think, on your stuff? I'm really curious.
I think they take 35 if you're a working member.
If you're a working member, because you're volunteering. And do they take more if you're a non-working member?
Yes, and she didn't have that amount, but I can get that from my friends because she's a non-working member. You have to, when you do it that way, you have to figure out whether you can make more things in the volunteer time that you would give that would earn you more money than actually doing the volunteer work.
Got it. That's really interesting. We're thinking about starting an online consignment shop. I just got a fellowship to do that at the university, which I haven't even It's really super – it's a 3-year fellowship. And the part is to create a consignment shop that allows people – I know you're in Canada and there's a lot of issues of all that. But the idea would be that you could have your own we're looking at this really cool platform that allows you to control the merchandise, you control what you post, you send it out, like it's all, like there's no centralized space, but that you could still be under the Just Want to Quilt brand. So we could push out and like, so that still small businesses could have spaces to get known in a kind of national context that they then could send them off to you. And then we also could have pop-up shops because you can do a in-person shop. So that's kind of the next big thing.
That's very interesting.
And our thought was, like, first is experiment because we're not a business. That's right. We're just a weird thing. So we're thinking about 20%. So that we also are thinking about potentially small loans. We have to sort of see how that would work. Where if you wanted to start something and you needed like equipment or something that you couldn't afford that was part of your business, that we would give you that loan. And then once that loan was paid back in sales, then it would go to the 20-80 split. So the idea would be to sort of think through that part. That part's a little harder because we don't know how to do that part yet. But that's
you need to hook up with a professor at the university who's in the business program.
That's my fellowship is at the business school. So they gave me a fellowship at the business school. Exactly.
That's
so,
right.
And what my fellowship is about family-run businesses and how you support family-run businesses. And one of the ideas is this, it's more than just a consignment shop. It'll also have resources, and we'll connect it to our IP lab for trademark and patent support. But it will be kind of like you'd be a member of it, and then you would have this sort of opportunity to do stuff. So that's kind of our new. We're going to probably have to cut that part out of the interview, but we haven't even started. We have that's kind of it just happened. Like I went to the thing like 2 days ago for the reception for it. So I'm pretty psyched. So we're going to have to talk to people like the Textures Craftworks and others about how they do it. But ours would be online mostly because we don't have a space yet. But that means because we thought even like I know pretend like there weren't the sort of all the problems that you were talking about, like the logistics, but to be able to put up a little bit of what you wanted to do or kit or something else that we could feature and chat about and like you would know, or do pre-sales on a kit, that would be, and we also thought like guilds could use it. All kinds of different ways that this platform could be used that would be very different than an Etsy or having your own shop, because you could kind of use a little bit of it. And again, our feeling is like 80% of what you're doing all the work. So 80% of it would go back to you. And we would keep 20% just to keep costs and also have this pool of resources if people were going to apply for grants or for loans to help their businesses. That was kind of the idea. So
that's cool. I've been thinking all week because I didn't know what we would talk about. So I thought of 2 topics that came to mind. And one, I am a member of the SACA Studio Associate. I always get it wrong.
Yeah.
Studio
we haven't. We keep touching. It's so funny. We get around them, but we never haven't interviewed them directly. Well, we need to do that.
So I put it on our Facebook group that this is the project that you're doing, and I'm going, you should talk to her. And then somebody posted they keep coming up with. So there's a Yahoo group, there's a Facebook group. It's a big organization. There's over 3,000 people that are members of it worldwide. They have their own magazine. They put on exhibitions, art quilt exhibitions all over the world.
Right.
They're huge.
Huge.
So one topic that comes up over and over and over again is copyright.
Totally.
And someone taking someone else's design.
That's right.
So the design.
Yeah.
The technique that they're using.
Right. Techniques aren't protectable. So, right. They're not protectable. So.
Oh, I wish you could tell that.
Right. Well, we're working on a book and we're working on sort of online course kind of thing. We're working on that, a more significant thing too. So no, techniques aren't protectable.
That is a huge, huge thing.
Yeah, no, they're not protectable.
I'm going to give you a little, and have never had problem with this artist. So when I first started art quilting, I got into using this fabric that's fairly see-through. It's a polyester. You can paint it, burn it, melt it, mold it. Like, you can do a lot with it. And then I printed on fabric, and then I printed onto this material called luchador. I had seen it on the net somewhere, and I thought, oh, I want to try that, because I was trying a lot of techniques in the last 8 years. And I went, wow, when you do that, that's really 3D.
Yeah.
And then there is a person that does that I began to follow, and she does that, and she's had a quilting arts been on Quilting Arts.
Yeah.
She's had magazine articles on it. She's written a book on it. I met her at Houston last year. Wonderful person called Wen Redman.
Yeah.
And so I came up with that idea, not knowing the other.
Yeah.
But, so
you can
something
totally
in your mind has picked something up.
Yeah.
So technique, artists are very protective of technique.
Yeah, so techniques are not protectable. Now, what is protectable? The book that other person wrote is protectable, the expression of that technique, right? You can't just go steal the book and make copies of it or things like that. The art you make from the technique is protectable, right? So you make a particular beautiful art quilt, that's an artwork in itself, and so there's some protection there, but on the whole, not so much. The techniques are not protectable. I mean, I guess if you tried to patent it, but I don't know how you'd enforce that patent, so it'd be kind of odd. So
but it is something that just comes up time and time again.
I know.
In that world.
Yeah.
And they'll be in Houston.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I feel
so I told them to come by.
Yeah. Come by at Houston?
So, yep. They're always at Houston.
Fabulous. We'll look for them.
They have a new show opening up called Metamorphosis, I think it is.
Very cool.
And I think going to Houston is also, this is one thing I wanted to sort of say, is opened my world up to, you talk about small business owners.
Right.
Small business owners work a lot.
They do.
They do a lot for free. They do a lot of, you're not in a small business to get rich, or I haven't really met anybody who's in, they would like to get rich, but I've been a bookkeeper for a small business, and you can't tie $1 per hour to what you do.
No, you can't,
because you have to wear so many different hats.
Right.
And I think my experience vending and thinking, I'll just go to quilt shows and vend, and I can make some money to, support my habit, to do this, to do that.
Little naive.
Was very naive.
Yeah.
You can do it. It's very hard work. It's learning a lot of skills. It's, I don't say taking from, because anybody should be able to be entrepreneurial. Yeah. I'm all for that. But I think Angie Wilson said it really good when she was on your podcast, that if you're just going to dabble, think about what you're doing. And that's why I'm moving away from.
You're moving away from it because it's too much. It's not worth it in terms of the. I get it. I totally get it. I really do.
I love quilting. I love talking about quilting. I love doing quilting. But really it is a bit of a hobby for people who are affluent. Unless you're doing it more the traditional way of you've sewn all your clothes and you're using your scraps for, making up your patterns and designs or whatever. But it's business now.
Yeah.
It's big business. Not sure who's making all of the $1 billion. That's
I'm not so sure either. I mean, I've asked that question a lot. I don't know. And I think about quilters. So this is so interesting. I'm thinking about your process of dyeing and sort of what we do. We're not time savvy. That's not what we're about. Like, it's not about like, oh, you're back. What happened?
There's a race and they can't get over here and they're trying to figure out how to get over here.
Okay.
Call me in 10 minutes. See if you're still doing it.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Sorry about all the chaos today.
That's okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. So here's my thought. We do a ridiculous hobby that takes a lot of time and energy and thoughts to create something that is, we're not going to ever get our money out of it in the sense of like, if we did like $10 an hour, like nobody's going to pay that. It'd be like a $50,000 quilt. That's our mindset. So then thinking about translating it to a business is really interesting because how do you have enough time to make the thing you're doing so that it's worth selling? And that's just a totally different vision of, you know what I mean? Like it seems in conflict in some way. I think we're almost anti-business when we come to our quilting as a hobby. We're not efficient. We're not a forward manufacturing. I mean, even if though we've got rotary cutters and we're doing it really fast and quilt as you go and blah, blah, blah. Like making it faster than the quilts you made when you were younger. I don't know. Do you feel that way about it? It seems like there's an interesting moment of like, because we had this also with Haley and she does print stamping on fabric and it's really beautiful. But again, how much can you make of that? How much can you do? Because when you start out, you're not an industrialized. You're competing against industrialization. I don't know. I'm just rambling, but it seems like there's an interesting moment there.
It is interesting because I always laugh when I see patterns and it's like make a quilt in a day, and I'm like, well, I can make a half a quilt in a day, but
Totally.
It never ends up coming out as fast as you think it will. And you're like, oh, I'm just sewing blocks together, and then the next thing you know, you've been doing it 9 o'clock at night.
It's so true. It's so true.
And we found out the model of a lot of the big quilt shows when we went to Houston.
Yeah.
So my lovely friend Leslie and Shelley had a dream to send a Canadian quilt exhibit down to Houston.
Yeah.
And they started along the process, and it was a special exhibition. And so they invited friends, quilters, artists to make quilts. So we got 27 quilts to go, and then it had to be accepted by Houston. So they had to approve all of the quilts that were going. So they accepted that. And up front, you're told you have to pay for your quilt to go there and back.
The postage.
You need sponsorship. So you either have to come up with the money or
find a sponsor. Did you guys find a sponsor, or what did you guys end up doing?
Well, a bit of both. So then, and this is all a learn as you go, because it's not really laid out. So I helped with taking all the pictures.
Yeah.
You needed professional pictures taken. I am not a professional, but my friend Karen and I said, well, actually Karen said, Joe and I can do it. So I wasn't there, but I love Karen. So
sure, we'll figure this out.
So we Googled, we learned, we have our cool cameras, we took the pictures, we got all the submission together. And some of the ladies decided at the making process that they were going to change the size of the quilt they were going to make, because if you made it one size, it was $100. If you made it another size, it was $200. And American dollars, so Canadian metric money, we're now
$200 to enter it into the show or to ship it?
To ship it. You had to pay a fee to do that. And then I'm not quite sure about the shipping. Like you had to pay that money to Houston.
So they could ship it back.
Send it. back to you.
Right.
So you're all of a sudden thinking, I'm making this quilt. They may not accept it. If it does get in, I have to send so much money.
Right.
And then it comes back. Well, we were fortunate enough. It was Canada 150. The
consulate.
No.
No.
The people who were doing it, Shelley and Leslie, had some contacts, and somebody else in the group had contacts, so they got into some money from. It did turn out to be the Canadian consulate to sponsor it.
Oh,
they
that's
had
nice.
some other small grants that they did. Someone approached the bank that they had worked for. Somebody approached a business owner who put some money in.
Yeah.
And so in the end, we did get money back from that because it was all found. But all of these exhibits, so when you apply to a SACA exhibit, so for instance, Metamorphosis is opening up at the Houston Quilt Festival, they ask for submissions. You pay a submission fee to send your picture to be juried, and then some of the exhibits that they put up, they get 200 submissions. Sometimes they get 500 submissions. They collect those fees, and then the 35 or the 40 gets in have to be shipped to their exhibition.
How much is the fee that you pay up front before you know that you're going to be accepted? Because this is true of the Cherrywood Challenge too. They're doing the fee ahead of time. Yeah.
That's the only way you can pay your show. So it depends upon the show. We had a regional show here. It was $25 per piece.
Interesting.
That you submit it, and you could submit up to 3. I've been in that show before. I don't have to send things postage because I'm close enough to the venue that I can take it, and I also help out with it. It's a biannual show. But you can submit to a lot of these venues and never actually get it in. But that's the way that they're paying for their venue. They're paying for their space. They're paying for the
cost,
publication, their all of that.
Right.
That's not a money-making deal for person submitting it, except for they get exposure and something to add to their CV.
And sometimes some shows they can sell it.
And in some shows, you can say you would like to sell it, and if it's sold, then the venue takes so much, and
they take a percentage of
the rest.
It, right? Houston does that, right? If it's sold at Houston, I don't know if they take 12% or something. I can't remember.
Nobody wanted our quilt. Well, the consulate did. They went to the Canadian consulate to be hung, but we're not sure quite where they are at the moment.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's
So
all very interesting.
It's an interesting business model.
Yeah, it is an interesting business model. My worry is if we do the consignment shop is I don't know who's buying, like how you create an audience to buy the stuff that you have. I'm wondering if the podcast allows for a more national audience. That was my thought, was if we could give a platform where people, if you came on as a guest and we were like, and, go to our shop to see some of their stuff or their patterns, that you could also, it would have a link to their own personal shop, that might be a way to help people get more exposure. Because it seems like there's a lot of people out there creating these small businesses, but I don't know how they get traffic to their sites.
Social media?
Social media. I was sick last weekend and I bought fabric and shipped it to my aunt in Vermont we're going down for American Thanksgiving. I was reading their About Us on their website, and they started as an Etsy shop, and then business got bigger through the Etsy shop, and so then they
made their own shop.
Made their own shop. So I think some people start that way, but
I
was looking on Etsy and different things, there's a ton of stuff on there that
I know. It's crazy.
got overwhelming,
right?
and I was sick, so it was easy to get overwhelmed, and then I
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I also think that, like, I'm not going to go start first, I'm not really, I mean, I don't know if I put anything on there, but I'm just, because that's not really, I'm a little, like, overwhelmed by life at the moment. But let's say that I wasn't, and I was like, I really love making rainbow quilts. That's like my thing. So let's say I've made so many rainbow quilts, nobody else wants them, but I do want to sort of put them up as like you could commission one, or you could sell the ones you have. I don't think I'd go to Etsy. I think I'd just be too shy about it. Like, that was kind of my feeling, is like, if you're also, you know, Etsy's got its own problems since it's now allowing manufactured stuff, and there's a lot of Etsy backlash. And I guess our feeling on the platform was like, first of all, I don't know if it'll succeed, or what, if people will be even interested in it, but it was trying to think about what that model is in terms of helping people build a brand, and seeing if it's possible to have a presence under a national brand, but still make your own brand, because people are like, oh, I love Joe's hand-dyed stuff. Like, I saw it here, but now I'm just buying directly from her because I totally love it. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. After a year of this, you know, I don't know.
It's social media.
Yes.
It's all those things that I don't understand about the background of how things work, like the
SEO,
protocols, the tracking back,
that's right.
The internet stuff.
The
all the
links,
internet
all that
stuff like that.
That's right.
That's just a huge thing.
That's right.
I mean, that's how Missouri Star became so big.
Yeah,
right?
And the thing is so
Little
interesting
shop
about
and-
so the interesting thing about Missouri Star and those is that they were starting in 2007 2008, that period of time. So I'm really curious if you can build a brand now. Like, how do you build a brand differently? Like, there wasn't any competition really when they started, and they had like a 10-year. I mean, now 10 years later, they're this gargantuan thing. And the Fat Quarter Shop is another one, right? So there's a couple that are just these big presence. And I'm really curious. So that's what we're doing. Our next starting in January, we're going to be looking at all of this. How do you build an internet presence? What kind of things are you doing? What role does social media play in SEO? And sort of trying to do the immersive thing, because for me, I can't really learn from the outside. It's just kind of not how I work. So.
And I think the interesting, like, thinking of someone from like my generation. So I'm 28, so late 20s, early 30s. We're more willing, I think, to buy things on the internet and to buy things like from online fabric stores, because you start following a designer or a type of fabric, and in our area it's hard to find, you know, more modern fabrics or more contemporary fabrics. So it's like, oh, I'm interested in that, I'll buy that online. I remember being at market and someone was saying, you know, talking about online sales and how we have to maintain the brick and mortar stores and you know, fearful of this online internet trend thing. And I'm like, well, everyone from my age, everyone's on the internet. Like, everyone buys things off the internet.
Right, you're not afraid of the internet at all.
We're not afraid of the internet. And so in my mind, I'm like, you have to, instead of being fearful of it, you have to market your product, your information to encourage internet sales.
Right.
And we know of a local quilt store that they're moving more towards online sales because they make more money that way. So
it's really interesting. I'm excited to go to that next phase of it to really understand. I mean, we've seen the power of social media and being on this podcast for the last 7 months, 8 months right now. I mean, it's very powerful. And so the question is, but I also see that there's all these little bits of people doing things on their own. And if you could put it into a co-op or cohort that like has more powerful resources behind them, I'd be really interested to see what that does to the I mean, and all the things that every single person has to figure out. The accounting and what kind of company you're going to be and the social media stuff. Like every single person is having to try to figure that out by themselves. And it seems like that's craziness, right? Like if you had a resource that said like, oh, I'm a member of this and this is they're going to help me figure out like how often do you post, and what do you post, and blah blah blah. Like that you would have, like you could just go somewhere for a resource. And I know there are other resources out there. I'm not saying like there's no resources, but I don't know.
It's easy to find that sometimes if you don't come from that background. Or
it's intimidating. I mean, and it's just so much of it, right? And like, let's say you want to hire someone to do your social media. How do you find someone? And like, how much is it going to cost? And like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just all of that. You know, there's just so what you were saying, JoAnne, which was like, I wanted to dye fabric and sell it, and now suddenly it's just like, oh my goodness, there's like way too much going on. And even the cost of a booth. If you could have gone to a show and had a whole bunch of other Just Want to Quilt or Quilting Army people and a bunch of stuff there, then like the cost of that booth goes down hugely. Like all of it is, you know, why are we so? I mean, same with but we're a really weird group because what other like maybe comic books, but like the fact that we have independent quilt shops all over the place doing their own thing is kind of remarkable in this day and age of franchises and all that somehow we're not part of that either. There's no
it's like the small time bookstore.
Right, which is gone pretty much, right? Like
pretty much.
I mean, there's still a few, but the fact that I find that really, I mean, I'm not like, I sound critical. I'm not critical. I'm amazed at all of it. Each individual shop and, you know, the average shop owners, they want to do it as they closing, getting to retirement, and then they close them. Some of them last a really long time, some don't. But they're all figuring it out. And I know there's resources and there's groups, so I'm not saying that there isn't, but it is kind of a remarkable, when you think about the economics of it, that it's all...
I have a friend who, she lost her, she was downsized in her 50s, and she thought she had the resources that she could open a quilt store, and she ran the numbers. She was a chartered accountant, and she just decided that you can't make it a go.
Yeah.
At least for her running the numbers of what she would want to make, it was. So she was going into it with a big financial background.
Yeah.
And just deciding that the work involved the
effort, the energy,
the whatever would not be enough gain.
Yeah.
And that had been her dream.
Yeah.
To do.
We see this over and over again. You know, a quilt shop my favorite one just closed. Or transferred to be online, but they had never taken a salary, right? And they'd been open for 4 years, and they were just, you know, it was too much. So, you know, and I don't know what kind of background you need to, I mean, as you said, financial background is super important. But again, not everybody knows that. And like, how do you, I don't know, it's just really, it's fascinating. So then I see all these micro entrepreneurs out there living their dream or trying to make it a go. Now, some shop, I mean, everybody starts small. You think about, as you said, Missouri Star started small. They all start small. Some of them get bigger. But so how do you make it a more joyful experience, I guess is my feeling of, and not so much frustration, and more realistic about what it is to be doing that, you know?
I think you see a lot of people online who are doing it because they love it. Mm-hmm. And they have another job, or they have a partner or someone else who's doing the supporting of them.
Yeah.
I would think that would be the major model of most of the online, pattern designers or
and that upsets. I mean, it's interesting because you bring that up, because that is one of the pieces I've seen that upsets the sort of people who self-identify as professional quilters. Because oftentimes they don't have that support system. Their all of their livelihood is coming from this, and it's a very different model than if you need it for rent or for your mortgage. It's a very different model than if you don't. So there's that interesting divide.
The same in other, so if you were a painter, or you're a chef or a baker, or you're going in to school, actually restaurants, I was reading a statistic that 80% fail. so there's big turnovers in that sort of, it'd be great to be a chef, but what are the hours am I going to work? Or, I would love to be a painter and I'm really, really good. And people say I'm really good. So I start selling some of my pictures, but, can I make a living on that? Mm-hmm. And, there's probably, you just don't see a lot of people making, their living, on doing those sort of things. So it comes down to, are you happy creating? And if you can create, and that gives you joy and energy, do that.
Right.
And if you feel you want to really do that as a business, walk into it doing some research. Go to a market if you can. It's not horrendous to get the qualifications to attend market for the first time, which really annoys a lot of people.
Yeah.
But for me, going down there made me decide I didn't want to be trying at my age, 55, to be a big retailer. I'm fine doing what I love to do.
Yeah.
And going to smaller, there's always people looking for teachers for quilt guilds, and the smaller quilt guilds find a hard time getting someone to come because no-one teachers can cost thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
It costs to bring them in, it costs to fly them in, it costs them they're coming to, you're putting that up in a guild in between 50 and 70 people are going to have a hard time doing that, to bring someone in who would be what I call a name quilter. Yeah. Kind of where I'm at with my business model of, I've got to do what makes sense for me and my family.
Yeah.
And
and so many, it's so interesting that you've done that, sort of your journey, because it seems like the journey that I'm seeing, which is teaching with and without kits, is really where people are making money. Like that's, sure, some people have online shops and, like the pre-cut shop that Krista Watson has, her husband runs. There are some models of that, but personal appearances and teaching and in-person stuff is still really a very strong main aspect of the economics of being part of this quilting world, which is really interesting.
I met Krista Watson last year. I had a book, and I went to one of the schoolhouse sessions where she was talking. That woman puts in an incredible amount of work to do what she does.
I know.
They don't make money much on books, and your whole family is involved. It just reminds me of
whole family. That's right.
Of my family growing up. We all worked.
Right.
We all worked on the farm to make the money so that we could be as a family.
That's right.
For the rest of the year. And it's hard for smaller time farmers to make a living nowadays in our region. And that's because nobody does want to work 24/7. My dad worked all year long.
Still does at 87.
And he still does at 87, bless him. And, he prunes grapes and peaches and pears all winter long, and he does it himself. He doesn't pay himself a salary. Our family model was, you worked all year, you paid off your bills, you had a house to live in. We had some cows, so we would have, some food on the table in the winter. My mom would can and stuff. But if it was a good year, you had money left over. And if it was a bad year, maybe you didn't.
Yeah.
So every year you had to put a little bit of money away.
Just in case.
Or just in case, and to support your business the next year. It's kind of like quilting, I think.
Yeah. So interesting, isn't it?
And there's agribusiness, big agribusiness. Economy of scales, and I think that's the way farming will go.
Yeah. So why do you think there's motivation for people to create businesses that you get in as a hobby, but then it goes like you're spending a lot of time with it. Is like, what is it about our sort of our psyche or who we are at this point that turns the hobbyist into the entrepreneur?
Ooh, some philosophy.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't know. I think there must be, like, you have to truly succeed, you have to have a passion for it. I mean, I have a passion for reading and for passing that love on, and so I became a librarian. And even though you know, we have some interesting people sometimes, I really get a joy when I can help someone find what they're looking for, or succeed in that. And so I can see that applying to in the quilting industry, or any other small business, that, you know, if you really have a joy for doing something. My brother's trained as a financial planner, but he's in carpentry and he loves it and he thrives in it. You want to share that. You want to help others learn to do what you enjoy doing.
Because it seems like people go two different ways. They are either go entrepreneurial or they go charity quilting. That as they get bigger, in that's the split of, like, I'm going to spend a ton of time doing Quilts of Valor or Linus Project or whatever it is that you, or your own charity. Or you say, hey, I know how to do this. I'm going to make a bit, you know, I've learned how to do this really cool dyeing of fabric. Why not turn it into a business?
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to that, what kind of person you are. You know, not everybody.
Not everyone's a salesperson.
Not everyone's a salesperson. Not everyone's a marketing person or whatever. But I think it comes down to what type of person you are. But I think everybody is creative. So that's actually one lecture that I did for a local quilt guild, because everybody was saying to me, "Oh, but you're creative, Jo. You're creative." And I don't sometimes feel myself as a creative person, and that's not to poo-pot, because I see other people that can create in a way, you know, like I can't paint, you know, like I just don't have that skill set, but I can put fabric together. But everybody is creative. So you go to that guild meeting and you see somebody is so good at putting colors together, or somebody takes that whole bag of scraps. And I know one lady, like, when you give her your scraps, she comes back with a quilt, and I'm going like, whoa, I wouldn't have been able to do that.
It's amazing when that happens. Yeah.
People want to celebrate the ability to do something, and to be creative in what you do. We always laugh and say, my husband's a creative accountant. He has learned to save us money creatively within the boundaries of the law, and et cetera, that I can't think of, because I'm not a numbers person.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just not wired that way. So, and I think as women, we like to nurture, we like to have our girlfriends, and last part of this last year, my husband's been getting invited along to some of it, and like my small art group, and it's like, this is just wrong, you know, like I'm going with my friend to this. No, it's art exhibit, you don't have to go with me, really, honestly, honey, stay home. So I think a lot of that is that need to belong and create, and we don't get a lot of that in sometimes our everyday jobs.
That's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. At least I think everybody's creative to something.
So interesting. Well, I think this is really interesting. So next, what's up next for you? What are you going to be doing? So I've decided that I need to
stop being a squirrel, as I say, and go off and do other things and hone what I do to make me happy, and I'm really finding I love to teach. So I love telling people about process, and I love researching and finding out about processes and seeing somebody else get excited about the same thing. So I think that is a way that I will go. I don't think I want to be world teacher. I don't want to be on the circuit. I don't.
You don't want to travel?
Well, I guess I do want to travel, but no, I don't want to travel doing the quilting gig thing. I think that most people are exhausting. You're away from your home and that's probably not what I love to do. But I do like to travel. But I just think the amount of work that you have to put into to make yourself that way is not something that
That's not what you want to be doing. Yeah.
I just don't think I'm wired to do that.
That's good to know, I mean, I think that's so important, right? I mean, I think it's so important,
I'm okay being in my small pond.
Yeah, I get it. We all have to kind of figure out who we are and not get caught up in all of it. Yeah. It's craziness, right? I mean, I think that's being a grown up. It's so funny. I took these students to LA for this big, it was very fancy. We went to Warner Brothers and all these other places and talked to their lawyers. It was a big field trip. And one of them came back and was like, yeah, that's not what I want to do. That was enough. She's like, I want a different life. I don't want that life. So sometimes we got to sort of venture out a little bit to figure out what we do want. But I think it's super grown up when we say, yeah, that's not, because it's easy just to be like, oh, just stay in that lane, thinking that's what we're supposed to do. I think it's braver to decide really what you want to do with your life.
Well, I've always encouraged my kids not to fail, but if you have something which doesn't turn out what you love to be doing, if you don't love it, then maybe that's not for you. And you're never too old to change out of that. And my husband, when we were young and we had a young family, he thought of going back. He has a master's. He thought of going back for a PhD. What would that all entail for our family, et cetera? Or he could go up the corporate ladder in the business that he was in. And he's like, no, I don't want to go up the corporate ladder. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And that's what I want to do.
I like that.
And that's what he did. And he stayed in smaller businesses as a controller and much happier for that.
And I think in some way that brings us back to the quilters, because maybe there's pressure for us as we get bigger or we get more, some people go into the other way they go is into long arming, right? So that they have long arming businesses, which seem fairly successful. If that's something you want to do, I mean, that path seems successful. And I guess it's entrepreneurial. But if you're quilting all the time and you really love it, do you feel the pressure to do something more? And maybe that's also something that's motivating people to think well, I'm spending a lot of time quilting, that maybe I should be doing it for X, for a reason. And I think what you're saying is really think about really why you're quilting and what you want to be doing, and don't feel the pressure to do this is your fun space. So make it whatever you want it to be. Don't feel the pressure to.
I mean, I had it. I made this quilt that my mom used in her show, and people said to her, "Oh, if you had a pattern in a kit, then I would have bought that right away."
Yeah.
But I don't really have a desire to draw up a pattern and to print it and to market it and
all that stuff. Yeah.
All that sort of stuff. I'd rather just make another quilt.
Yeah.
And I don't really have a desire to make 15 of the same type of shapori pieces at a time, 30 times 30, and do the same repetitive thing over and over and over again. So it was really a good thing for me to learn.
So interesting, isn't it?
So I think I'll share my love of quilting. And I'm thinking this is where my website will be going. I will share my love of quilting. I will share my journey of quilting. And at all times, I'm going to promoting the person that has inspired that. So if I have really fallen in love with a method or a technique or something that where someone is trying to make their business doing that, then I would rather promote that because I don't need it. I don't need it for an income.
Yeah.
I mean, money is always nice, but
it's the balance, right? Because I mean, as you said, it's a ton of your time, and how much are you getting back? So it's your friend looking at the quilt shop, like is this going to be a profitable business? Is it very different than, do I love doing it and I want to, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, where are you sitting in that equation? I think is a really important question and the journey that you're on.
And I think people really have to look and see what inside themselves, what they can give.
Yeah.
And that's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm just not willing to give 90% of my time.
Yeah.
To doing
to
something.
Everything. Well, I mean, I have to say that that's true of this podcast. It's like taken over in this crazy way. Now, granted, I mean, I like it, but there is a moment of like, oh my, like, and even doing the booth, like, we're just experiencing it. Like, we're you know, making money, not a big deal, but you know, it's just really a lot. And I can kind of feel like what it is to do that from just the experience of like taking, like it takes over your life in this incredible way. And so you got to make a choice of like, is that what you want? I mean, you know, we got to, at least for me, I got a little more balance. I need a little more balance in my life. It's a little out of control, but yeah. So we have another business. I think I told this story before that we have another business that is very like real serious business that my husband and I have that's related to copyright. And he was with my daughter shopping with my daughter, grocery shopping or whatever. And he was like, it's 99% quilting and only 1% durationator. Like, somehow it's gotten like totally out of control and out of whack. So yeah, we got to get a little more 50-50 in our house. But I, you know, so anyway.
Yeah. I think I've coming to a good balance.
Yes, exactly. So
we keep telling my dad now that he's retired that we're going to get him quilting.
Yeah, you are?
Yeah.
That's cool.
He says he will learn how to quilt when he finishes all his books.
That's so funny.
But he is also the guy that retired that's still working 1 or 2 days a week. So
you know, you got to know who you are. You know.
Yeah. But that's partly to support the quilt habit as well.
That's very funny. Well, it is so wonderful chatting with you. I really feel like these are important conversations, and I really appreciate you sharing your journey. And I'm really curious to see what happens next. And I want to come visit you guys. It'd be so much fun. It would be great.
Oh, we have house space because we got rid of my youngest who's moved out. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm the only one that's still at home. So.
Oh, well, see, it's good. It's good.
Well, if I move out, she'd lose her sewing buddy. So
yeah.
Oh,
you'll come and visit.
That would be very sweet. That would be sad. Well, I hope you guys have a good day, and I appreciate you sharing all of this. And sorry for the chaos. That's just Saturdays around here, I guess.
That's okay.
Cool. Do you want to review this before it posts? Yeah?
You're the one that did most of the talking.
No, I don't think I said anything.
No. I can send it to you if you want.
That way. No,
okay.
It's okay.
All right, cool. Well, this one's going to have to get edited, so on my side. There's like really long pauses.
Well, I just really love that you're talking to a whole range of people, and it's kind of giving a voice to the industry.
Yeah.
And feedback to the industry.
Yeah.
So, maybe what can the industry do differently?
Yeah.
What can people be more aware of? And I think that's important. So it's a really cool project.
I appreciate that. I mean, I felt like when I listened, when I was listening to podcasts, I felt like the regular people, like I'm a regular person, at least I identify myself as a regular person, like our voices weren't part of it. And yet they were marketing and having us buy a bunch of stuff. And I felt like we should be part of that conversation too. That's really, I mean, I love the fancy people, but I feel like this conversation today was incredibly meaningful to me. It really, we need to have more conversations like this, it really mattered. And so you guys are great. But this really, really made my day. And I think these conversations are really important. It's not just, I don't know, it does feel different to me than like buying regular. It's just something, there's something more to this than just going to buy the fabric. It's this whole community, and there's just more to it. And I think that we should have that part of it, the story in there,
Yeah, that's really cool.
I don't know. Anyway, you're so kind. Thank you for your time and your patience.
I am just still thankful it's not a crazy day in my house.
Well, it could be, but we've locked ourselves off. So
yeah,
you have. You're like, what are you going to find when you get out of the room?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, pretty much.
Well, I wish you well and hope there's not too much to clean up from the chaos of whatever happened while you were away.
You know what? It's whatever. It gets done.
All right. Well, have a great day. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So you've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. And I'm Elizabeth Townsend-Gard. If you like this podcast, keep listening. Also, we have a Facebook group. Come join us. We talk about a lot of things. We also have an Instagram account. And of course, most importantly, I really hope you get a chance to quilt today.